Okay, real quick video on rings. I was showing you the spiral locks on the piston assembly. I was getting ready to put the rings in. These are stock bore rings by Pro Seal. They are made in USA. They'll come in packs. You'll see top groove number 1. That's your first ring. That's your second ring. Third ring will be 2 on oil control. And over here, you can see I installed several pistons and rods right now, but I wanted to show this to you. I started putting the rings in, and you have to file these. You cannot just stick them in as they come out of that box, because you'll see these are very specific. This is top. This is ring number 1. You want to stick it into the bore. You want to use a piston by itself just to make sure that it's level. You can do this by hand. You can do this with your fingers too. Just the key is, like you see even with the piston, key is just to make sure that that surface that is completely level with each other. Because as you can see, and making sure this is somewhat even from the top of the bore, you can see there's very little clearance here. Come over here. See, there's very little clearance between that gap right there. So there's no gap, and you can't run it like that. If you try to run it like that and you just stick these rings in, it's going to heat up, and that ring's going to butt against itself as it heats up. And when that happens, the ring's going to seize against itself. It has nowhere to go. So it's going to end up cracking, breaking the ring, and it's going to score this cylinder, and it'll damage it to a point where you're probably going to need a sleeve, or possibly even throw the block away. So you got to file these rings. That's a given. If you're going to build an engine, you have to file these rings. I can pretty much tell you every set of rings you're going to get is going to need filed. It'd be hard pressed to find one that will actually have the right gap out of the box. So there are general rules of thumb, which is basic Chevy rebuild guidelines, but the ring manufacturers themselves do actually publish this. You'll see it says ring installation guidelines, depending on the use. So high performance, street strip, street moderate, turbo or nitrous, late model stock, circle track, nitrous race, and blown race only. You'll see here's the top ring, which is what I have in my hand, the second ring, and the oil control rings, the rails and the oil control. So what you'll do is you'll take the bore that you have. So if you're 30 over, you'll take 4.030 times 0.0045. In this case, this is a stock bore block. It is actually bored to 4.005 in stock form. So I took that calculation times the 0.45. As you can see, I just did some quick calculations here as to what my min-maxes could be based on my application. So 4.005 times 0.0045 based on that chart is 18 thousandths of an inch. And then I just kind of took it up from there, 50, 55, 57, and 60 based on this chart. You'll see anywhere from 18 to 24. So me personally, I'm trying to keep these rings, the gap between 18 thousandths and 22 thousandths. The second compression ring, I'm trying to keep between 20 and 24, and that's again based on this chart. And then the oil control rings, you see it just has minimum of 15. And usually they come in, there's a pretty healthy gap right here with these little oil control, excuse me, rails. So they generally don't need to be filed. Those are the only 2 rings that you'll probably find out that they'll be way beyond 15 thousandths. They're probably on the order of like 25 thousandths, and that's fine. They don't really do anything as far as compression. So with that being said, you want to file these. You can file these by hand. You can file these using, a hand file. But it's trust me, these rings are hard. It does take some time. If you go online, you can find a cheap ring grinder. These work really well. This is aluminum. It's made to go inside a vise. It does have a diamond grinding wheel, and you do it by hand. So what you do is you just essentially take the ring, you hold it against these pins, and you push in on it because you want even contact. You want to make sure the ring isn't cocked. You want to make sure that the flat surface is right up against the flat surface thing. If I pull back on this, it's going to file it on an angle. Try to get it as even as possible and make sure it's up against that fence area. Make sure you just do that, and you just start turning a wheel and just grind. And this is arbitrary, again, you have to kind of just get a feel for it. And this is probably the most tedious part. This is probably my least favorite part about building an engine is grinding rings. You want to make sure you get even pressure on each side. You want to take your finger and just make sure you get any debris off of that. And then you'll just keep fitting it. So you'll put it back in, check it against the bore. And now you want to get a little bit below the surface because that's really where the top ring is going to stop. You can measure that. You can really be persnickety and measure it. But keep in mind, these boards, even though they might tell you, well, it's a perfect 4.005, obviously at a microscopic level, it's going to have some variation. And then you're going to have a decent set of feeler gauges. So what I do is I pull all the ones that I want to check against out, and I make sure they're readily available. So I'll start with 18, since 18 was the minimum. As you can see, that's not even going in. So I got a little bit more work to do on this one. Pop that back out. Back on the ring grinder. And you don't want to get too aggressive. You don't want to take too much, only because you can't put it back. And you don't want to get yourself in a situation where there's such a large gap. Yes, it will work, but you can lose some compression. And you don't want to get to a point where you have to buy yourself a brand new set of rings, because rings anymore aren't cheap. I think this set was like $60 or $70, something like that. But you get what you pay for, but it's just taking your time. Make sure you don't damage the part enough. See, that's perfect. That's perfect. That's 18 thousandths. I am going to go, did I write on my sheet here? 22 thousandths. No, it's okay if it's a little bit larger than the max, but not too much. So that's 22 thousandths is almost there. So it's between 18 and 22. So here's 18. That goes right in. That's at least 18 thousandths. That's the minimum. And then it's probably closer to 20, I would say. Do real quick. Here's 20. It's probably about 19. So I'm going to take a little bit more off just for my own comfort level. So much stuff in here, it's hard to maneuver, but again, you can see I'm not getting too aggressive with it. I'm not spinning the wheel with a drill. I'm not going crazy. This is all done by hand, done by feel, and I've done it enough that I can kind of do it myself. And again, I'll just kind of make sure everything's even. Make sure that gap is even, that surface is even. So this is probably closer to 22. There's 22. There's 20. So it's 20. Perfect. That's exactly what I want. It's 20 thousandths of an inch gap here, right here. Now you'll notice that when I put that in, you see it? Again? Right here. Let's see. Let's tilt that down so you can actually get some light in there. Right there. Here. See right there. So you can actually see the gap now. When I put that ring in, before I followed you, you didn't see anything. It was very hard to discern where the gap was. But that's what you want. So again, this is right where I want it, 20 thousandths of an inch. So that's number one ring. And you'll do the second ring the same way. You'll use your mid-max on those just to get it right. And there's your second ring. Now the orientation is kind of important too, only because these have a little chamfer on the back. The second ring will have a chamfer on the facing the bottom of the engine or the oil pan. The top ring or the first ring will have a chamfer up here. So it's important to pay attention to when you put these on too. But if you keep the bag separate, top ring or first ring, second ring, then you won't get them twisted up. I've never heard of anything that if you get these mixed up, if you get the first ring and the second ring mixed up with each other, if there's any detrimental effects there. I haven't done any research to see if it has, but I don't want to find out either. So I'll do that second ring. But one thing you want to do, and this is what I do, you guys might have better suggestions, but when you put these on a grinder, especially on the diamond wheel, it's going to make rough edges. So you want to take those off. And I have a lot of mini files. And again, you don't need very expensive tools. These are, I think, just a set of cheap files. But you want to just take the roughness out of that because there might be a little ridge here. And when you go to set it inside the piston, when you go use your piston ring tool, it's going to want to stick inside that land. And you don't want to do that. You don't want that sticking because if it's sticking, it can't rotate. It's possible it can seize in there and you don't want to do that. So you just want to take off those edges. You know, again, this is how I do it. You guys might have better suggestions, and I do welcome any suggestions you might have. So I'll take that off. just to make sure there's no rough edges on these rings. I want these rings to float nice inside that piston. The ring grooves are oversized. You can measure those too. There are dimensions on those. If you look at the ring manufacturer, they'll tell you how much gap. So when you put this in, you want to have, I think it's 4 thousandths clearance between the ring groove itself and the ring, just to make sure that it floats inside there. It doesn't stick. You don't want it sticking. It's that. So you will have, I've had this tool for probably well over 30 years. You see it's made in USA. I would be hard pressed to find the newer ones are made in USA. But you would just take that, you see how that's made, just expand it. And then you see the ring grooves here, that's number one. You just take it and drop it. Again, make sure the top says top. And there's orientations on these. You got to make sure that, and again, the manufacturer will tell you that. Most manuals will tell you this. You can't get all these grooves lined up, gaps lined up, because you'll have straight through blow by between the top, second, and the oil control rings. But I'll show this to you after I'm done doing what I need to do, and then we'll go have a video where I'll install the piston pin, and then I'll put the spiral locks in here, and then I'll tap it down into the bore and get it connected to the crankshaft. All right, see you next video.